episode of Transformation in Trials. Today we're going to focus on the topic of cough. And today in the studio with me I have Peter Small, who is the Chief Medical Officer of Hyfe and an acoustic epidemiologist. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you so much.
And Peter, just setting the stage for us, could you tell us more about how cough has traditionally been measured in clinical studies?
Yeah, I would say in a word, badly. Cough has been caught in this vicious cycle. It was hard to measure, and so companies didn't include it in trials. And because it hadn't been brought to the FDA, there was no clear process for establishing cough as an endpoint. I think, the good news is that there's been a lot of attention to antitussive medications based on some increased understanding of the pathogenesis, some new neural mechanisms and receptors that can be blocked. And I think, for the first time in 60 years, we're looking at some exciting drug candidates. But the disconnect between the cough community and the FDA was really brought into sharp focus just the other day on the FDA Pulmonary Advisory Committee on November 17th. The patient-reported outcomes, which the cough community is quite enamored with, was dismissed out of hand by the FDA as not validated. And the way that cough is currently counted in the FDA trials is by wearing a device on your belt, a microphone attached to your chest, a microphone on your lapel, and it basically records a day in your life. And then that sound is listened to by humans who count the coughs. It's a primitive method, and it came under a lot of discussion at this FDA meeting as well.
Can you tell us more about what the discussions were about?
Well, I think there was, some genuine disagreement about whether or not the patient-reported outcome was validated. There were some questions about the device, which was FDA cleared as a cough recorder, but not counter, and the mechanism by which the recordings were turned into cough counts was discussed in quite a bit of detail.
So that sounds like it's actually most of the approach to measuring cough that came under scrutiny.
Absolutely. I mean, it's clear that the FDA is sort of adrift right now in terms of their alignment with industry on how these exciting new molecules will get validated and approved, and that's gonna delay significantly getting these really important medicines to the people who need them.
So it's a question of how do we measure cough, and then also how do we apply medicine to that cough? And if we can measure it, then it's very hard to argue that we can actually make it better. Are there other ways? Are there other schools of thought for how we can measure cough?
Well, the entire focus of Hyfe is continuous, passive, unobtrusive, privacy-preserving cough counting. And, cough is complicated, and you need continual monitoring because of a couple of different effects. One is cough is under volitional control, and therefore things like the Hawthorne effect, when you tell somebody, I'm going to put some device on you, cough normally. It's sort of like, don't think about an elephant. And that issue actually wasn't even addressed in the committee. And the other issue that wasn't addressed is that cough is highly stochastic, and people have good days and bad days. And in a study, if you're just measuring 24 hours, you might catch somebody on a good day at enrollment, a bad day on your follow-up evaluation, and entirely miss the impact that drug has. And in contrast, with continuous monitoring, you get a really rich and robust data. It's amenable to a lot of analysis using simple standard change point analysis to see whether it's statistically changed. You can look at other aspects of cough, like are people coughing in big bouts, which may be more problematic for them. So, we think that continuous cough monitoring will not only have a really powerful impact in the management of these patients, but more relevant to today's conversation is that it can accelerate the development of new antitussives.
Mm, absolutely. How do you measure cough continuously?
So we're an acoustic AI company, and if we have a microphone and a chipset, which can either be in a phone or a watch or any number of other devices, we monitor sound level. And when there's an explosive sound, we grab a half a second of it. And then that half second is passed through a second algorithm, which recognizes coughs. This is an acoustic AI program that's been trained on 20 million cough-like sounds that have been listened to and annotated as cough or not by humans. And so it's using convolutional neural network, sort of the same technology that Google Photos uses to recognize a cat. No one said to that program, oh, cats have pointy ears, but they tend not to flop over. They just present millions of pictures of cats, and they can recognize a cat. And that's essentially what we do. And the algorithm, is based on this massive data set. And in our FDA enabling trials, it's highly accurate. We pick up 90% of coughs, and with one false positive an hour. And that's as people go about their activities of daily living, riding on the subway, watching TV. That's basic. That's the core of our technology.
And Peter, why is cough a problem?
Well, cough is actually a big problem for some people. It's more than an annoyance. Most of the time when people have a cough, it's a transient condition. They have a upper respiratory infection. But for a significant number of people, probably about as many people have chronic cough as have asthma, they cough constantly. And by constantly, I mean hundreds of times a day. And this is more than annoyance. These bouts can result in vomiting, fractured ribs. Many women have urinary incontinence when they're coughing. So it's quite debilitating, and it has been for quite a while.
And during the pre-call, we also talked about being burdened with cough during COVID and also post-COVID. How has that contributed to it being a worse condition to have?
Yeah, it was always embarrassing to have a cough, but now it's been stigmatized in a way that, I mean, if someone has a coughing fit in a checkout line at the grocery store, people look at them like they just pulled out an AR-15. I mean, people recognize that cough can be the way that disease is transmitted. But for these poor folks who have chronic cough, it's not infectious. And yet it's extremely socially isolating. People can't go to the movie. They at the FDA hearing, they had 13 patients talk, and it was tragic. I mean, there were people who at work had been moved into corner offices and told not to come to meetings. There were people who do telemarketing who had to quit their job because when they started talking, they would cough. So cough is a big deal.
Is chronic cough the only reason why people struggle with cough?
Well, so there's been an interesting transition in the understanding of cough. It used to be that people really thought that cough was a symptom of another disease. Things like GERD or asthma, postnasal drip would cause this chronic cough. But what's become known in the last decade is that chronic cough itself is a disease, and it's a neural hypersensitivity, and it's a little bit like chronic pain. It's the receptors for coughing get upregulated. The more people cough, the more they want to cough. It's been a very interesting transition, and one of the interesting aspects that I didn't know before I became a cough nerd is that if you see a speech pathologist and you have this condition, 4 hours with them can reduce your cough 40% in a well-done clinical
What?
trial. So it opens this other avenue for therapy, which are digital therapeutics, which is
Mm,
one of the things that we're working on as well, which is the idea that if if you have a chronic cough, you have this constant tickle in your throat, and you
mhm.
think, oh, cough, it'll go away. But it's like scratching a mosquito bite. When you cough, it actually makes it worse. So by just training people that, cough is not necessary, it's not helpful, giving them some techniques to suppress it, and then in our digital therapeutic, giving them real-time feedback, saying like, oh, you've been coughing a lot. Are you using your techniques? And we think
Mm.
that this is a whole new avenue, either for treatment or perhaps as a companion app to be used in combination with molecules.
Oh, that was a very large number that you can reduce by therapy. That's impressive. I'm also wondering, so we talked about that digital therapeutics can make a difference, and if you can actually diagnose cough, you can actually also do something about it. But what kind of treatments for cough do we have today?
Well, right now we don't have much of anything. So the last time that the FDA approved a cough medicine was 60 years ago.
Woof.
And since then, most of the treatments are other drugs that are used off label. So narcotics are a very effective way of suppressing cough, but obviously have a lot of side effects. And there are other drugs like gabapentin and others that cough experts use, but none of them actually work very well, which is why I was so disappointed that this new drug didn't fare better in the FDA hearing.
Well, it sounds like the way we've been thinking about cough, that is potentially the problem, and not just developing medicines for it.
Well, it's a great example where some fundamental biological insights have opened up whole new avenues of alleviating suffering.
Mm, that's very interesting. I kind of want to broaden the conversation a little bit more because you have worked with acoustic diagnostics for a while. What is happening in general in acoustic diagnostics? Where else can this kind of diagnostics be applied?
Well, it's interesting, if you think about artificial intelligence and these deep learning techniques, they're really dependent on massive amounts of data.
Mm,
And you need a very data rich signal. And the richest signal in medicine and the first target were images.
mm,
And so AI is already transforming interpretation of images. If you look at dermatology, radiology, pathology, ophthalmology, I mean, these are all just falling one after another. Doop, 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 doop. Great technologies to assist in diagnostics. The second richest signal is actually sound. And
mm,
and and in addition to being very information rich, it's quite easy to obtain given that we're all walking around with high quality microphones in our pockets or we have them on our smart speakers. And so I think that really acoustic AI is it's kind of the breaking wave in medical AI in my mind right now.
mm. That's really interesting. Um, if we talk about Hive specifically, uh, I know that we've talked about like how it can contribute to clinical research, but can it also be used by patients themselves?
Yeah, so our core technology are these cough recognition algorithms, and they're available in a few different form factors. We have a freely available health and wellness app that anyone can download. Just go to your Android or
Mm,
iOS app store, and that will monitor your cough and give you a lot of information. Now, it's not a medically cleared device, so it's not meant for making diagnoses or managing, but it
mm,
provides patients with much better understanding of their cough. And it's allowing patients to recognize that they actually are coughing 400 times a day and have more informed conversations. So, for example, when I diagnosed myself with COVID, I called my doctor and I said, hey, I have COVID. I'd like some Paxlovid. And she said, well, you're not at risk. And I said, well, I'm a cougher. And she goes, yeah, everyone coughs. I go like, no, I coughed 457 times yesterday. And she's like, oh my God, and wrote the prescription. Now that wouldn't have happened without objective data.
Yeah.
Bringing data through our health and fitness app to people's understanding of their cough, what their triggers are, and what the pattern is I think something which we're feeling there's a lot of traction for. The second instantiation is in a dedicated watch, sort of a Fitbit for cough, if you will. And that is, we'll be submitting our FDA package at the end of this year. And so we anticipate that we will be FDA cleared as a medical device that can be used for diagnosing and managing patients towards the middle of next year. And I think that's going to really improve the approach to cough, which is often empiric trials. If you go to your doctor and you say, I've got a chronic cough, they'll guess that it's GERD and give you some Pepcid. And but it's an unmeasured empiric trial. So now it allows doctors and patients to work together on saying, well, how much did it get better? And then the final form factor for us is we have a very light SDK that can run on other devices, smartwatches, consumer watches, smart speakers, and we have a number of partnerships in the works there. And I think what's going to happen is first, cough will be a little bit like glucose monitoring. It will be something wherein if you have the condition, you can monitor it yourself. And then I think after that, it will become like step counting. It'll be ubiquitous. It'll be on all consumer devices. And at that point, you'll just pay attention to it when you care.
That's super interesting. I know that you're based out of Seattle. Do you think that the whole ecosystem for medical devices that there kind of is around the Seattle area, does that contribute positively to the development of a solution like Hyfe?
Well, it's certainly been helpful to us. I should be clear. We're a globally distributed company. We have, our data scientists are in Spain. Our engineers are in the Ukraine. Our user interface person is in Canada. I mean, we're scattered statisticians in Tennessee. I mean, we're all over. And so, when people ask where we're located, I usually say in the country of Slack. But for me personally, living in Seattle has been a huge advantage because it's a very innovative, rich place. And so when I have a question, it's very easy to find somebody and for the price of a beer, get some really good advice. And then also, we participated at the University of Washington's Creative Destruction Lab Accelerator, which was a phenomenal. I mean, we've been involved in a number of accelerators, but CDL was really a cut above in terms of the quality of mentorship and their whole approach to helping young companies. So yeah, I would say for me personally, it's been great to be in Seattle.
Well, Peter, I would be curious to learn more about yourself and how did you end up in this particular space?
Well, my background is originally in clinical medicine. I learned how to take care of patients at San Francisco General Hospital at the dawn of the AIDS epidemic. I then moved to Stanford, where I was on the faculty, and then up to Seattle, where I built and ran the TB program for the Gates Foundation. And the common theme in that kind of chaotic career was tuberculosis. And so I spent 35 years of my life focused on finding people with a cough and getting them tested for TB. And then, I am a cougher myself. I've had a chronic cough. I cough 40 to 80 times a day, and I have for 3 decades. And so I've sort of been on both sides of the bed on this issue. And I think it's the was the excitement that we could bring cough into the era of precision health
Yeah.
that really motivated me to jump on board with Hyfe, and it's been an amazing ride. We've gotten so much done in so little time. It's been quite fun.
And well, that's an amazing experience in general. Um, and this leads me to the question that we always ask our guests on the show. If we gave you the transformation and trials magic wand that can change one thing in the life sciences industry, what would you wish for?
It's a good question. I would better fund the FDA. I
Mm,
mean, the FDA plays such a critical role in enabling innovation, and they have great people.
mm,
We've been through many FDA meetings because we're in the de novo route. Our technology is so unique that there was no predicate, and the people at the FDA they've been great, but they're just overwhelmed,
mm,
and it results in long cycles. It takes 3 months for them to answer questions. When at the end of that 3 months, you have only an hour on the phone, and these brief interactions that are separated by long periods of time are fundamentally a consequence of their work load, and I think it significantly slows innovation.
mm. I love that wish. No one has ever wished for that before, but I think that would actually make a fundamental difference.
It's I won't get into the politics of the role of government, but I think this is a case in which, for those of us
Yeah.
who are trying to build better tools to improve health, it's a huge issue.
Mm, I agree. Um, Peter, if people want to ask you some follow-up questions or want to learn more about yourself or Hive, where can they find you?
Yeah, so our website is easily discoverable with a Google search on cough monitoring or Hyfe or whatever, and then people are welcome to email me directly. My email address is peter@hyfe HYFE.ai.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.